Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at a really interesting corner of healthcare, continuous glucose monitoring, CGMs.
That's right. A technology that's really changing things for people managing diabetes.
Exactly. And we've got a recent market report here, the Global Continuous Glucose Monitoring Market Report 2025 from Cognitive Market Research.
A good source to dig into.
Yeah, so our goal today is really to pull out the key insights. Where does this market stand right now? Where's it heading?
Understanding the size, the growth, what's happening region by region.
Precisely. We want to get a handle on how big it is, expected growth, and those key regional trends.
Okay. So these CGMs, just for context, are these small wearable devices, right?
Mm.
They track glucose levels constantly.
Yeah, in real time. It gives a much, much richer picture than, the old finger prick tests.
Definitely. So what's the big picture, according to this report? What are the headline numbers?
Well, the global market size estimate for 2025 is pretty substantial. It's pegged at USD 751.6 million.
Okay, so over $4.7 billion globally in 2025. That's significant.
It is, and it's not stopping there. The growth projection is quite strong.
Right, the forecast goes out to 2033.
It does, and by then they expect the market to reach, get this, USD 794.8 million.
Wow. Almost 8.8 billion. That's nearly double the 2025 figure.
Exactly. It's a really significant jump.
So what does that work out to in terms of like an annual growth rate, the key AGR?
Yeah, the compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, is calculated at 8.00% for that period, 2025 to 2033.
8%. Okay. That's a solid, healthy growth rate year on year for quite a few years.
It really is. And, that kind of sustained growth in healthcare tech tells you something.
It suggests this technology is becoming increasingly important, more widely adopted.
For sure. So globally, strong upward trend. But the really interesting part, I think, is how this breaks down regionally.
Absolutely. The dynamics can be quite different depending on where you look. Where does the report say the biggest market share is right now?
Right now, it's North America, holding the largest slice, actually.
Yeah.
Over 40% of the global revenue in 2025.
Over 40%. Okay, dominant. And the value there?
The market size estimate for North America in 2025 is USD 1758.09 million.
So 1.7, nearly 1.8 billion just in North America.
Yeah. And within that, no surprise, the U.S. is the biggest contributor.
Makes sense. What are the U.S. numbers?
The U.S. market alone is projected at USD 1,387.13 million for 2025.
Okay. And the report mentions drivers for that.
Yeah, it points to, the large diabetic population there, obviously, and also just strong healthcare spending overall.
Right. But what about its growth rate? Is it keeping pace with the global average?
Interestingly, no. The projected CAGR for the U.S. 2025 to 2033 is a bit lower. It's 6.3%.
6.3%. So still growing, but maybe suggests a more mature market compared to some other regions.
Could be. It does make you wonder about the relative shifts over time. What about Canada and Mexico?
Canada's market size is estimated at USD 210.97 million in 2025. Their CAGR is a bit higher, actually, 7.3%.
Oh, interesting. Why higher?
The report suggests maybe government initiatives supporting diabetes care, plus rising diabetes rates contributing there.
Okay. And Mexico?
Mexico comes in at USD 159.99 million for 2025, with a 7.0% CAGR. So pretty much in line with the North American average, excluding the U.S. slightly lower rate.
Got it. Okay, so let's hop across the Atlantic. Europe is the second biggest market, right?
That's right, holding over 30% of the global revenue.
And their market size for 2025?
Let's see, USD 1,377.96 million, so close to 1.4 billion.
Okay. And their growth trajectory?
Also projected at a 7.0% CAGR from 2025 to 2033. So solid growth, matching that North American regional average. The report breaks down Europe quite a bit, country by country. Anything stand out there?
Yeah, it's quite detailed. Germany actually has the largest market size listed for 2025 at USD 272.84 million.
Okay, Germany leading in Europe.
And it has a 7.2% CAGR. The report specifically mentions collaborations there between institutions and manufacturers may be driving adoption.
Those partnerships can make a difference. What about the UK? The UK is also strong. USD 231.50 million market size, and a slightly higher FIGR, actually, 7.8%.
7.3%. Interesting. Higher than Germany's.
Yeah, maybe a push towards more personalized diabetes tech. Hard to say just from the numbers, but it's notable.
And France, Italy, Spain, the other big economy.
France is around USD 136.85 million, 6.2% CGR. Italy, about 118.5 million, 6.4% CGR. Spain, roughly 113 million, 6.1% CGR. So, substantial markets, solid growth in the 6-ish% range.
What about Russia? It was listed separately, too.
Yeah, Russia's significant. USD 213.58 million market size, but a slightly lower 6.0% CGR projected.
Okay. And even smaller countries are listed, like the Nordics, Switzerland.
Right, Sweden's around 43 million, 7.1% CGR. Denmark, 29 million, 6.8%. Switzerland, 21 million, 6.7%. Even Luxembourg, 16.5 million, but with a strong 7.3% CGR.
So quite varied KGOs even within Europe.
Definitely. And then there's a rest of Europe category, about 193 million combined, growing slower at 5.7%. So Europe's a picture of, let's say, established steady growth overall.
Okay, established and steady in Europe. Now, the report seemed to really highlight Asia-Pacific, APAC, as a key growth area.
Oh, absolutely. This is where the growth story gets really dynamic. APAC holds about 23% of the global revenue currently.
So number 3 in size.
Right. Market size in 2025 is USD 1,140.38 million. So over 1.1 billion.
Okay. But the growth rate is the headline here.
Exactly. The projected CGR for APAC from 2025 to 2033 is 10.8%.
Wow, 10.8%. That's significantly higher than North America or Europe.
It really stands out. It's just much more rapid expansion is expected there.
What's fueling that kind of acceleration in APAC? Is it 1 or 2 countries or broader?
It seems pretty broad, but with some key drivers. China's a huge part of it, of course. Their 2025 market size is estimated at USD 478.96 million.
Almost half the APAC total.
Pretty much. And their CGR is strong at 10.3%. The report mentions rising adoption of CGM tech there.
Okay. And India, often a big growth story in healthcare.
India definitely fits that here. Smaller base currently, about USD 114 million in 2025. But the projected CAGR is the highest in the region, 12.7%.
12.7%. What's driving that specifically?
The report points to improving healthcare infrastructure. Better access, maybe more awareness, digital health adoption. It all plays a role.
Makes sense. Infrastructure improvements open the door for these technologies. How about other major APAC players? Japan? South Korea?
Japan's significant. USD 157 million market, 9.3% CAGR. South Korea is also strong, around 137 million, 9.9% CAGR.
So strong growth there, too, close to that 10% mark.
Exactly. And then you have Australia at 59 million, 10.1% CAGR. Singapore, smaller market, 23 million, but 11.1% CAGR. Taiwan, 44 million, 10.6%.
Even Southeast Asia as a whole.
Yeah, that region collectively is projected at 11.6% CAGR from a base of about 75 million. It really paints a picture of, dynamic growth across the board in APAC.
It certainly does. So North America leads now, but APAC looks like the growth engine for the future, potentially challenging that lead down the road.
That's definitely the impression the numbers give.
Okay, what about the other regions? South America.
South America holds a smaller share, over 5% of global revenue. Market size around USD 180.56 million in 2025.
And their growth.
Pretty solid, actually. Projected CAGR is 8.7% for 2025-2033.
Higher than the global average, then.
Just slightly, yeah. Brazil is the key market there. USD 77 million, 9.3% CAGR, driven by a growing diabetic population.
And Argentina.
Argentina is interesting, too. Smaller, about 30 million, but a really high 9.6% CAGR projected. The report links that to increased awareness efforts.
Interesting how different drivers pop up. Okay, quickly then. Middle East and Africa. Smaller markets, I assume.
They are the smallest, yes.
Yeah.
The Middle East is around 2% of global revenue, about USD 190 million market size in 2025.
But what about growth?
Surprisingly strong growth projection, 9.3% CGR.
Wow, higher than South America even.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are the biggest markets there, but Turkey and Qatar also show strong KGRs near 10%, linked to high diabetes rates and awareness campaigns.
Okay. And Africa?
Africa has the smallest share, around 1%. Market size just over 100 million, USD 104.54 million in 2025.
And growth there?
Still respectable, 8.3% CAGR projected.
Yeah.
South Africa is the largest market, followed by Nigeria, which is linked to population growth and urbanization.
Fascinating. It's such a very global picture, region by region, with different factors pushing growth.
It really is. But beyond the regions, the report also talks about the big overarching drivers for the whole market.
Yes, exactly. Let's touch on those. What's pushing this global growth overall?
Well, the biggest one, undeniably, is the increasing incidence of diabetes worldwide. More people diagnosed means more need for monitoring.
That's the fundamental demand driver. Makes sense. What else?
Development of healthcare infrastructure is key, as we saw in places like India. Better infrastructure means better access to advanced tech like CGMs.
Right. And patient demand itself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just a rising demand for continuous tracking, not just for managing diagnosed diabetes, but people are more interested in understanding their glucose levels for general health, for wellness.
Yeah, that proactive health monitoring trend. Okay, but it can't all be smooth sailing. What about the challenges, the restraints?
The report points out a few key ones. Cost is a big one. These devices aren't cheap, and that's a barrier, especially if insurance doesn't cover it well.
Right. Accessibility and affordability. Always an issue with new medical tech.
Definitely. Then there are stringent regulatory hurdles in some places. Getting approval can be slow and complex.
So regulations can slow things down, and the insurance aspect again.
Yeah, limited accessibility for patients without comprehensive health insurance is explicitly mentioned as a restraint.
Okay, those are important counterbalances to the growth story. What about overall market trends, like innovation?
Yes, the report highlights ongoing trends like new product launches and continuous technology development. The devices are getting better, smarter, easier to use.
And that drives competition, I imagine. Who are the big players mentioned?
It's described as highly competitive. Yes, global and regional players. Key names mentioned are Novo Nordisk, Senseonics, Dexcom, Abbott Laboratories, and Medtronic.
Okay, the major names you'd expect. Any specific examples of recent developments?
Yeah, a few were cited. Senseonics collaborating for at-home insertion of their Eversense E3 system that makes it more convenient.
Ah, convenience is key.
Dexcom getting FDA approval for their G7, touted as highly accurate. Medtronic getting European approval for their MiniMed 780G system with a new, simpler sensor.
So easier insertion, better accuracy.
Right. Also, Dexcom launching the G7 in Canada, and Senseonics reporting positive results from a clinical study for their Eversense system. Lots of activity.
It sounds like a very dynamic space. Does the report break down performance by a specific device or brand?
It does give a couple of insights there. It suggests the Guardian real-time CGM system, that's Medtronic's, currently leads the market.
Why does it lead?
Likely due to its features, its precision, and especially its integration with insulin pump systems.
Okay, that system compatibility is a big deal. But is it the fastest growing?
Interestingly, no.
Huh.
The report identifies the Dexcom G4 Platinum as the fastest growing category,
Dexcom G4. Why is that one taking off so fast?
attributed to ease of use, mobile connectivity sending data right to your phone, and data sharing features.
So the user experience and digital integration aspects are really driving growth in that segment. That makes sense.
It really underscores how important those factors are becoming for patients, beyond just the core accuracy.
Absolutely. Okay, so if we had to boil all this down, what's the single key takeaway from this deep dive into the report?
I think the main takeaway is this. The global CGM market is clearly poised for significant, sustained growth. It's being fueled by fundamental drivers like rising diabetes rates and also by rapid technological innovation.
And the regional picture.
While North America is the current giant, you absolutely have to watch Asia Pacific. That's where the most explosive growth potential seems to be concentrated over the next decade or so. It feels like we're seeing a potential future shift in the market's center of gravity.
A really fascinating look at a rapidly evolving market. We've covered the impressive size, the strong growth forecasts, those really varied regional dynamics. It's clear this is a critical area in healthcare tech.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up, here's something for you, our listener, to think about. With these growth trends and tech advancements, how much further can CGM technology personalize diabetes management? What might that look like in, say, 5 or 10 years?
And maybe even beyond diabetes. What other surprising uses could emerge for these kinds of continuous body monitoring technologies? Think about wellness, athletic performance, other conditions.
Lots to consider there. That brings us to the end of this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.